Welcome to Widowed by 30. We're your hosts, Katey and Taylor. We're here to provide raw truth, guidance, and support to those who may be walking a similar path as ours.
For even those who have no idea what it's like to lose a spouse. So stick around, grab a glass of wine, and hang out as we dive into all things widowhood.
Hey y'all, and welcome back. We are, I feel like I was very aggressive in that intro, so but
We're talking about
here.
some off topic.
I know. We had a little chat going before we started this episode. But today we are going to talk about life insurance. Which I think is a very important topic and episode. And whether you are in our shoes or have been in our shoes or whatever,
you watch
everyone needs to listen to this episode.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good episode to share with your friends, family, loved ones. I think it'll just be a very good, informative episode. But anyway, I guess to kind of get it started, life insurance. I'm trying to even, there's like so many things that go into it. And I will say, like, for Maddie and I, Josh having had life insurance has been a saving grace for us. And no matter how big or small a policy is, I think if, depending on your financial situation, because obviously the more money on a life insurance policy, the more expensive it's going to be each month or yearly, however you pay for it. But I would at least recommend having a bare minimum, enough to cover the expense of a funeral. So $10,000 to $20,000, depending on how.
It's only like a few dollars
you want
for like 10,000. Like, it's not much.
It's really not. Like Maddie, when she was a month old, I got a life insurance policy on her because you never know. And I was a single mom, and I didn't have 10 grand to drop if something were to happen to her, and I'd rather spend $15, $20 a month paying for one rather than having to figure out where I'm going to get 10, 15, 20 grand from to be able to have a funeral for my child.
Well, I mean, it's just like preparation for the worst time of your life. Like, that's one less thing that you have to worry about in that time frame.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It does. And, and I think it's the same across the board, but like when you go in and you are planning a funeral with the funeral home director, if you have a life insurance policy and they verify it, like, that's all you got to do. Like, your hands,
you don't have to pay anything.
You pick out the things you want and things like that for the funeral, and like, that's it. They verify that life insurance policy. You don't have to come anything out of pocket, whatever, and then anything left over is yours. It's a check written out to you. But anyway, as far as like that part of it goes, I think like at least having a bare minimum, if you are able to afford more, especially, like if you are a one income household like Josh and I were, like, I have been able to grieve. I haven't had to stress about, oh my God, he passed away. How are we going to pay our bills? What are we going to do? Like, just that anxiety of having to provide for myself and for Maddie has been like a saving grace, along with other things. Like we were smart with our money and had a savings and things like that. But I haven't had to stress about work and a job and how am I going to put food on the table? I have been able to be
Yeah.
home and be there for Maddie and be a mom and a wife without having to be a wife. And to just focus on myself.
Yeah.
I feel like it was the biggest blessing
Through this whole experience.
through all of this. And I hate that it's a blessing because I'd give all that money back to have
Oh, no doubt.
him back, but I think whatever you can afford, and if you have a set number in mind of I can spend $200 a month on this, whatever life insurance company or insurance company you go through, you can tell them, I want to spend this much money a month. And they will put together a plan for you and tell you, okay, well, with that much, this is what your policy would look like. And it covers this and da 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 da. And there's so many different ones out there. And
I will say, for people that are going through what I went through on the cancer aspect of it,
I was just about to ask that,
or anybody that has an underlying health issue, it's not that easy because Clayton was a very smart, very, very smart when it came to our money. He kind of budgeted everything to where, like, if we would have dropped $200 a month for life insurance because we knew the inevitable. Like, we knew it was going to eventually happen. We just didn't know when. And so he tried. He was 8 years cancer free. And they told him that he had to be 10 years cancer free to up his policy. So we were only able to do a certain amount because he had that underlining. So not everybody is like fortunate enough to be able to like pay the max. Because I mean, if we were, I would have gotten $1 million policy, whatever it was. But we just weren't. That wasn't allowed because he was already sick. And that's why it's so important to make this a priority in anybody's life, because anybody can get diagnosed with anything at any
tomorrow,
anytime. Yeah. And so if you're smart about it and you really kind of think of all of the different angles that it could go, like, it's worth the monthly payment to get however much you can afford. Like you said, however much you can afford, $100 a month. I think $100 a month for one person or two people, I mean, it would be like up there, right? Because life insurance isn't that much. Like, it was like $20, I think, for us, for his. And that was through his job, and his job matched it. And so, like, I didn't get as much as we wanted. It wasn't the minimum, but it wasn't as much as it could have been. So, I mean, I am to the fact where, like, I still, like, I'm having to work and I'm having to do things, but I was also able to put money up for our children. I was able to put money up and invest into some things. Things like that although the money is gone, I paid for, like, his dad had a life policy on him. So he was able to use that money for his funeral. Okay. Thankfully, that wasn't taken out of ours, but because he had a policy on him since he was a kid. So, like, that's like the beauty of keeping it, the children, my grandparents, like, they did one for me and my sister growing up. And I think my grandma did it, actually. My grandma did mine, and then my other set of grandparents, they did my kids. So each one of them have a policy for us. Like, that was kind of one of their gifts to them. But obviously, I think it's like the minimum or whatever, because you just never know. But for Clayton, we didn't have the option of, like, upping it because no insurance.
The underlying condition,
it's more liable, and so very
they're more
strategic.
likely to have to pay out. And so they're like,
Right.
if we're going to have to, then we're just going to leave it like it is. And that's the
Yeah,
crappy
and we
thing
were
about life insurance policies.
we were even willing to pay more than like what was the standard, you know, or
standard.
whatever. Like if we need to pay a premium because he's sick, cool. They just like would not allow it. He got denied because, you know, that he was sick prior. And that's how a lot of insurance companies are. They are, all of them really. Like they don't allow you to go higher than the basic or higher
Yeah.
than the amount that you had going
That
into
was
your job.
prior. Yeah.
Right. Or whatever it is. So thankfully his job matched what he had put in. So we got double of what we would have had. But it's still, it sucked because you could have went and had paid $50 a month, $100 a month, and been set. Like I wouldn't have had to work, you know, for
Right.
a year if I was smart, right? You know, like
Right.
whatever it was. Like obviously people aren't always smart with their money. And I can't say that I've always been smart. Like I've definitely spending money during this time has made me feel somewhat of a joy. So I have my days where I would just shop till I dropped. And then I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But then I'm like, well, you know what? It made me feel better in this moment. So however it means, like how, if it can help you in any way, like do it, but also take into consideration, like you are going to have to, you're not smart, you're going to have to eventually have to go back to work, you know, things like that. Yeah. So life insurance, I would definitely 10/10 recommend getting no matter what. Because you just never know.
Right.
You
and
never know.
I think, you know, whether you're married or not, you know, you need to sit down and have a discussion with whoever is going to be in charge of planning your funeral, you know, because I mean, thankfully, like for Josh and I, we were pretty organized and everything. But even in that moment when it happened and I was trying to find all the life insurance stuff to be able to go and plan the funeral, like I could not find anything because like I was just,
Well, your mind is just everywhere.
oh my God. Yeah. I was just trying to figure out what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
And I ended up finding one policy. And so I was like, that's enough to cover the funeral. And I took it. And so when the whole process got started, it, because everything was through the same life insurance company, it was able to like pinpoint all the other policies we had. And so it was like, I didn't even have to go out and search for the remainders that I couldn't find in that moment because, you know, once they enter in your social security number, it like
Pops
flags
up.
everything and pops everything up. But I think sitting down with whoever's going to be in charge of that and letting them know, okay, this is where I have a life insurance policy at in this amount, or you, I mean,
Honestly,
I
didn't even know the company that we had the life insurance. It was because we paid his job. So it like, they automatically,
so it was through
Prudential reached out to us. He had been with this job for like 7 years. Like,
okay.
It was a long time, but yeah, like continue.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there. Not
No,
everybody
you're good.
pays attention to that, so you should.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like for us, because like he had his own business, like we had to provide all of our own health insurance, life insurance, everything. And so when we had gotten all of that set up, I thought I had everything, and I ended up finding things later on, but you know, we had just moved and things were still in boxes and I hadn't unpacked everything. So it was just a struggle to find what I was needing in that moment.
Yeah.
But sitting down, talking with someone about it, letting them know what company it's with, whatever the policy number is, just those little details is the
Really
biggest
helps.
thing to lift off of the stress off of someone or the person who is having to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because if I could go back a week prior and I would have known this was going to be the outcome, I would have had everything laid out ready to go. The reality of it is that's not how it works. So if us doing this episode,
but even with me, like, I knew it was coming, but I was so mind fucked. Like, I could not process getting all of these things in a row. His job is the only reason why I was able to, like, get everything the way I did, because they were on top. Like, they were calling me. Like, I was like, hey, he passed. Like, you know, and they automatically were like, we got it. This person in this department will be reaching out, and they will steer you every direction you need. And I was like, okay.
Right. I know. And,
So
and because, like, we had but he did everything. He had his own business, but then, like, at the time of his accident, he was working for someone else. And so it's like there was a small business policy in case of a incident that, but it wasn't life insurance. It was like an accidental policy where I think it was like $10,000 or something like that. And so that ended up paying for the funeral. So I ended up not even have to use any of our life insurance policy to cover that, which, is a blessing in disguise, I guess. But it's so hard to know if you'll be prepared. And you could think you'll be as prepared as anyone or more prepared than anyone. When you were in that moment, you were not the least bit prepared, because I was like, we're organized in our finances. We're organized in this. We're organized in everything. And then you sit down to try and figure this stuff out, and you're like, where the fuck is the shit I'm looking for? Like,
well, because, like, you're in shock, and your brain isn't, like,
comprehending anything
at all. Like, you can look at the paper that you need, and you're like, is this it? Like, you're just really not. And I'm honestly thankful that I had Carly and, his dad and stuff, because they helped me get everything situated, because I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. I mean, I probably could have, but it would have taken me a lot more time, and I would have been a lot more of an emotional wreck than, like, I already was. So having that help definitely was great. But I would just advise and encourage anybody who is, this goes for literally anybody, like your parents, your siblings, your kids, whoever's going to be the people that are in charge of, like, planning your funeral. I would get the policy, whatever you're going to do, and give them all the information like you were saying. But I would really look at your finances, budget it, and be like, okay, I can exceed this amount, because, like, you won't be here anymore, but your family are the ones that are going to be picking up all of the pieces and medical debt and all this other stuff that, we had. Like, I had medical debt from Clayton that we had to pay and stuff, and I still haven't paid it all. Like, it's just crazy the amount that comes through, like, especially in his situation. But I would try to get the most amount that you can get, that you can afford, because expenses come up. Funeral, bills, your debt, all this other stuff. And then, like, in reality, people do need to grieve. And now that I'm on the other side of this, like, I really can say, I wish that, like, I'm going to up my policy. I haven't upped it yet, but I am. Like, I'm going to up it so that my kids, if something happens when I'm older, or my parents or whatever, and they have to do the same thing that they had to do with Clayton, I would have set them up to where they can take time off and not have to work and, do whatever, because everybody deserves to grieve, and not everybody gets to, because they didn't plan. They didn't plan for it to happen. They didn't think that they would need this much time off. But, like, in reality, like, you need time. And if those funds are available to where you don't have to work in that moment, then, like, take it. A few extra dollars a month is not going to make or break you.
Right. And that was exactly
don't go get
it.
Starbucks. Like,
yeah. Well, And that's how it was for us, like we sat down and Josh was like, okay, this is how much money I make a year, but if I only made this much, we could live comfortably, and we really sat down and figured out those numbers that, okay, if something were to happen to me, then, and the policy's this much, and you were smart with the money. And of course, he was like the finance guru. So he was like, okay, when something happens to me, you need to invest in this, and you need to call so-and-so and tell them you want to do this with this part of the money and blah, blah.
Yep.
And now I'm like, what was it he said that I needed to do again? I didn't write any of that down.
But that's why they need to write it down and have it
exactly. And have it in a place for said person to be able to check.
Yeah.
But so we figured all of that out, and it was like, okay, this is what. And so we got a policy for X amount of dollars, and like, I hate it so much though, because I don't want that money, like it freaking sucks, because it's like, I feel so grateful and so blessed, and like, he's not even here, and he's still taking care of me and Maddie. He's still providing for me and Maddie. But I would give all of it back for him to be here. And and it's like, I hate the money. Like, I hate
the love-hate,
yes, because I'm like, okay, cool, I don't have to stress, like everything's paid for, whatever.
But you stress in like other ways, like you
other
might not be
ways
financially,
in every other aspect. And like, another thing with all of that and the money and life insurance policy, you don't get that money overnight. Like, just because you have a life insurance policy doesn't mean the day after they pass away that money's in your account. And every situation is different. And Taylor and I had this discussion, I don't know, probably over a month ago, because I was like, okay, how long did it take you to get your money? Because I was kind of like freaking out.
From what I've seen, and like, you're not the only widow that has reached out to me about life insurance. And so, or like that we've talked about it. And they were asking me the same thing. And I told them, I said, I think mine was pretty like quick. Like I think it was like a month and a half.
Okay.
It took. But I think like an average is like anywhere from a month to 2 months, because they have to approve it. But then once they approve it, it's within the week you get it.
Right. Well, and so what I've ended up learning now that like this is all said and done for me and everything's cleared and gone through, but so for them to process a life insurance policy, there has to be a death certificate.
Yep. And you have to wait for the death certificate, which can take 1 to 3 months.
Right. So like, in your scenario, how long did it take for you to get your death certificate? Or Clayton's death certificate?
I want to say it was like a month.
Okay. For me, it was 2.5 months. But that was because Josh was a fatal car accident.
Right.
In the event
they had to like
of a
investigate,
car accident,
right?
There's, they do their investigation, the police report, a toxicology report. And it doesn't matter that there was no one else involved in the accident. It was a fatal accident. So they have to rule out that he wasn't drunk or on drugs or any of that stuff. And so that was the holdup for hours, because they can't initiate the death certificate without showing that all the toxicology was clear. And I don't know if people know this, but like, all drugs across the board, we have just like natural percentages in our body. So the coroner's office had called me, and she was like, hey, I just want to let you know we have his toxicology, so you can come pick it up, whenever you can. And she was like, do you want me to tell you results? And I'm like, yeah, like, give me the answers. And she was like, everything came back clear. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, because I had been praying about it. Not that I was concerned, but you just
all right, Josh, what were you doing?
I know, you just have that anxiety of,
Like,
what if he was?
Yeah, and I had no idea.
What if he had like this crazy drug problem and I had no idea about it? So it was like she gave me the thumbs up, like everything came back clear, cool. I go pick it up and I get in the car and I open it and all the drugs had like a small percentage. I was like, what the fuck? I thought she told me the report was clear. And so I
can
like
see
call
you
her back.
spiraling.
Oh my gosh, I was freaking out. And so I called her as I'm sitting in the parking lot and I was like, hey, like I just came and picked up the toxicology for Josh. And she's like, yes, ma'am. I was like, I thought you told me it came back clear, but like I'm looking at it and there's all these numbers. And she started laughing. And I was like, okay, I feel like an idiot. But she was like,
No, I would've never
everyone's
known.
body like produces a certain amount of everything. And she was like, it could be in the medications you take, it could be just your body producing it, whatever.
Oh, Clay would have
Anyway,
had a lot of that. 'Cause he had so many. He was on like 30 medications.
oh, I'm sure, but because his was of natural causes,
Oh,
you know,
it said
there's
glioblastoma, and that was it. That's all they needed to see.
all it-
Glioblastoma, signed off. There you go. And that's why I got so lucky and got it so early, because it was
they knew
clear
the
as
cause
day.
of death.
Like, yeah.
And that was something like I had to go back and forth with our insurance with, because they kept asking for like the HIPAA release form and all of this stuff. And I'm like, for what? Like, y'all don't need any of his medical records. This wasn't a medical related death. And I had already spoken with the insurance about it when I had gotten the form in the mail, and I was like, what is this? And so she was like, well,
Oh, yeah,
I'm looking
I
at your
remember you were going
file.
through all of that.
Yes. And she was like, I'm looking at the policy. And she was like, well, his cause of death was a car accident. She was like, you don't even have to fill any of that out. But they kept sending it to me and calling me saying I needed to fill it out. So that was like another hurdle I had to go through and jump into, because you never speak to the same person. You
Yeah.
have to speak to all of these different people. And every time I'd call, I'm like, I need to speak with a supervisor, because half of y'all don't know what the hell y'all are talking about. This was not a medical related death. Y'all do not need his medical records. This has nothing to do with it. He was in a car accident. Like,
Yeah.
what else do
What
you
else
want
do you
me?
need? Yeah.
You needed the police report, the toxicology, that was it. And so that was just like added stress to the situation and trying to figure out, because I'm like, y'all are stressing me out for no reason, you know, and I've given you everything that you need. And so like, quit coming at me. And the file has been noted 1,000 times that medical records are not needed. And
Yeah.
you know, and it's just frustrating, because like for yours, which I'm sure it was already filled out, like they had the medical records and they knew his cause of death was his cancer.
Yeah, because he was on hospice. And so like it went from the hospital to hospice. So everything was like already ready. Because like when you go to hospice, you don't, I mean, it could be a day, it could be years, you don't know, but they automatically transfer everything into one
over
area. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like once we finally got his death certificate, which was 8 weeks, 9 weeks, something like that, then it began the process of actually processing the life insurance. So let's see, we're 5 months in. Well, shit, God, we're almost 6 months in. Oh my goodness. We were at the 4.5 month mark before they finally approved.
Maybe mine was 3 months then. I think I got mine in March.
Okay.
Maybe it was like coming up on 3 months. Maybe that's what it was.
Okay.
So this is when the two.
Yeah. Well, and like, it's so
but
crazy
because we
to
had
me.
we had funds, like I wasn't like stressed about it.
Right.
And so
that's how it was for me too, was like, thankfully we had a savings account and, you know, our banking, everything. And then, you know, like the best man in our wedding, he had set up the GoFundMe for me and Maddie. And like,
so like that's what we were living off of, was our GoFundMe that we had, like when we had the benefit. and we paid off all of his stuff, and then we were able to like save some money because we knew it was going to be happening, you know.
Right.
And so like that's kind of what helped us transition.
Yeah. And like
life
all of
insurance.
that I have set aside in something that'll grow for Maddie for college or for later on down the road in life, you know. And
Yeah.
because I was against a GoFundMe. I was like, I don't need it. Like, we're good. And Paul was like, no, like,
It's just
Josh
for
was your
Maddie. It's not for
provider.
you. Like, it's
and
for
that's what
Maddie.
he was saying. He was like, I get that you're good, but he was like, what if 2 years down the road something happens and then there's no money there for you to have for Maddie to go to school? He was like, this is something for her. And I was like, okay, like I'm fine with it. So I mean, he set it up and everything worked out great with it. But people need to realize like this isn't an overnight thing. Like it doesn't happen right away. And that is the frustrating part about it, because God forbid you forget to make a payment to them and they want to lapse your policy.
Oh yeah, they'll cancel it immediately.
But they, in my opinion, take their sweet ass time processing everything. And one day I got into it with someone because I kept getting letters in the mail. It's like, your policy will be complete in 15 to 20 days. Cool. I called back 25 business days. Oh, well, we're still working on it. I'm like, okay, well, that's not what the letter said that y'all sent me. Well, I mean, it could take up to 2 years. And I was like, the fuck? So then I'm really stressing because I'm like, okay, we have this much, you know, I'm trying to do the math in my head and I'm like, I'm gonna have to get a job. I'm gonna have to do this, freaking out. And so I was like, what do y'all expect people to do who aren't as financially stable as I am? Like, there are so many people out there who don't have a savings, who don't have an emergency fund, who literally would lose their house tomorrow, like if something happened and they couldn't pay a mortgage or whatever, you know. Everyone's financial situation is different, and that is the one downfall I would say about dealing with life insurance companies. Is it worth having a life insurance policy? 1000%. Is it frustrating dealing with them when you're going through this process? 1000%.
But that's why it's so important to help your surviving spouse or your surviving family and have everything in order. That way you don't have to stress about it as much, because they're still going to stress no matter what. But if you can narrow it down,
and minimize that stress on their plate, it is the best thing. I'm not going to say the best thing ever, but it is a saving grace.
I mean, in the situation, like, it really is. Like, it is the best outcome for that situation.
Yeah. Because I mean, I could be in the situation where we didn't have a life insurance policy and I'm up shit creek, you know. And thankfully, you know, when we bought
one on me, but I would have never put one in my, like, I mean, I didn't. I'm healthy. Why would I think that I would need a right until shit like this happens? And you're like, well, time to get me a life insurance policy, because I think his job has one on me still. His job was the best, like the absolute best. But I think, I don't know. I know that I'm on their insurance until next June, and like I have his 401k and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I need to like, if I already have a life insurance, I need to up it. Like I want my kids to get whatever the max.
Right. Like, yeah. And that's what I ended up doing, because it was like, okay, our sole provider is now gone. And so like we've cleared all of those funds and they're now in my possession. And so then I added some into our investment accounts, and then I kept some in savings, and then I have some in Maddie's college. You know, I have it kind of in different places working for us. That way it's growing rather than just sitting in a bank account not collecting anything.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, so all of that money will be Maddie's if something were to happen to me tomorrow. But I also need to increase mine because now she has no parent. to help take care of her. She has no parent to provide for her. You know, like I have to make sure my baby is taken care of, you know,
And
as much as I
honestly,
possibly can.
yeah, and like it's really beneficial for you in this aspect because you do have the knowledge to kind of get all of it, like all your ducks in a row. And like at the end of the day, like no matter, I don't, whatever the amount is that you can put in for your children, but like you're setting her up for a future no matter what, whether you're here in 10 years or you leave this earth in 50 years, right? Like you're setting her up, and like it is like you only have her to make sure that she's taken care of. Like for me, I need to get my kids the most that they can get because they gotta split that shit. And like, like they don't get all of it.
Right. I know. And and I have my dad and my brother like set up not as the beneficiaries, but as like the decision makers until she reaches a certain age, because they are both very financially stable people. And I know they will make sure everything is set like it needs to be for her. But and I feel like you also need to kind of have somewhat of a game plan with
Do you have a will?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They'll have to follow that, like no matter what.
Yeah, that's I know. Because I was just concerned about her getting the money and then other people in her life trying to take control of that. And I was like, no, that is the last thing that's happening with our hard-earned money.
If you're not present in her life right now, you don't get authority over that. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So I was like, my brother and my dad, like, and then that's another thing. Like, you need to keep in mind who you have as beneficiaries, and if minors are involved, the responsible party of who's going to take care of those funds. Because like, okay, if my parents are getting older, if my dad were to pass away tomorrow, yeah, my brother's still on there to help make those financial decisions for Maddie, but what if something happens to him? You still have that constant anxiety of people in your family dropping like flies. And so just making sure you're staying on top of that, like my driver's license, my emergency contact on my driver's license is Josh. Well, I don't know, a few months ago, I went and updated all of that because I'm like, if something happens to me and they call Josh, he's not going to answer the phone. Well, anyone who lost a loved one, if you had your spouse's, your emergency contact, if you were in a fatal accident or whatever, that they reach out to you. So I put my parents on it now, and anyway, I feel like when life insurance comes into play, you also need to have a game plan for said money, like, okay, like your instance, he had medical expenses. So like you paid for most of that, or however you dealt with your money. Like for me, we had a little bit of like spending credit card debt, if you want to call it. And then business expenses that I had to take care of and deal with. And in handling all of that. And thankfully, like when we bought our house, we paid cash. So it's like I don't have to stress and worry about a mortgage. And that has been the biggest blessing. And, I feel like God always prepares you for things without you knowing it. And when Josh's accident happened, like so much of our life came back to the forefront of my mind of like, that's why this happened. That's why this happened. That's why, like, I literally feel like God was making the way and making sure Maddie and I were going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Because he knew like what was about to happen. Like, so
he already had Josh's life planned out. He knew that like it was going to happen.
It was going to happen. And so like We left Colorado and moved back to Louisiana, and we are so much closer to family. Our house is paid for. You know, like, you have those little things where, like, it all makes sense why things happened the way they did, before he passed away. But, you know, if you're able to pay off your house with life insurance money or whatever, like, I just feel like there needs to be a game plan. Be smart with it, invest it. Yeah, I get we're gonna splurge some of it too, you know, like, I just bought a new car for my birthday, you know,
I got a new
and
car
I
too.
paid, yeah, and I paid cash for it. But it's like,
Well, I
yeah,
didn't pay
it
all of
sucks.
mine. I put like $30K down, and I still have a monthly payment, but I mean, it's $50,000
It's
car.
very minimal. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like, I paid cash, so it's like I don't have a mortgage payment and I don't have a car payment. Yeah, the car payment, I paid it all in one lump sum, but technically I'm saving money because I'm not paying interest. You know, like, I look at it in that aspect of it. And, you know, and we've traveled all summer, so we've splurged on that. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what helps us in this situation. And that's what makes us feel better. And if I want to go shopping and it's going to bring me some joy, like, I'm going to go shopping. If I want to take a trip, I'm going to take a trip, you know, as long
And
as
I noticed
it's
that you
within
do that.
reason.
I think that, like, for anybody that's going through this too, is they, I feel like it all happens around the same time. Like, you get the money, but you're like grieving so much, or you're in denial, you know, or whatever it is, you're dead inside, and you're like, well, maybe this will bring me some type of peace or this type of comfort. So, like,
Mhm.
you splurge for like a month or whatever, a month or two or whatever. And then you kind of are like, all right, let me get back to reality. Like, I had
Yeah.
my fun. Now it's bills, savings. That's it. You
Yeah.
know, and then
And that's exactly how my mindset is. You know, we've had our fun this summer. I'm taking my one last birthday trip this coming up weekend. And then after that, like, it's back to reality, you know, back to
yeah.
the grind, I guess you could say. And until next summer, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
um,
I mean, I
but
just took 2 months off. Like, I had a sinus infection, and so my antibiotics are working, and now everything's like coming
now
up.
it's
So,
like clearing up. You're good.
yeah, but what was I gonna say?
You
I
took 2 months off.
Oh yeah, like, I didn't grieve for 6 months, and
Yeah.
then all of these like things happened during the summer, and it just like put me in such a funk that I was like,
Hmm.
I'm mentally not okay. Like, I need to
Yeah.
just take a break
I need to
and
take a step back
step
and
back. Yeah,
yeah.
like, I told my brokerage, I was like, I am not in a good headspace. Like, I have to remove myself completely. And like, I was still working like on occasion, but I completely stopped. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself this time to kind of grieve because I haven't been able to. But now that like Dallas started school today, I'm getting a routine back, like, I'm going to start hustling again and working my ass off. But I
Yeah.
needed those 2 months to kind of just like wallow in my
Yeah.
own self pity, if that's what you want to say, you know, whatever it is. Like, I was just fucking sad.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
I was
Yes.
sad, and my anxiety was bad, and I pushed it all to the back of my head up until I couldn't anymore. And then I had no choice but to grieve it and process it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, but I'm a very, all right, get this shit out,
Yeah.
move on. Like, we
Deal with
gotta,
it, and yeah, we got to keep the ball
yeah.
rolling on things.
So, but
Yeah.
because I was smarter, I guess you can say, like, about some of my finances around that time, like, I was okay for 2 months. Now I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, I see my savings getting a little, I need to replenish
Dropping
it.
down. Yeah.
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 Like, I need to get some stuff going and start working full time. But if I didn't have the life insurance, or I wasn't working as much as I was the first 6 months, then I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
point blank, get life insurance.
abso-freaking-lutely. I mean, it'll be the best thing you could do for those who
Yeah.
you leave behind. And you can also have stipulations on the money, you know, depending on what you want the money to be used for. Obviously, all of that has to go into the details of a will, but, you know, like, and this was something Josh had always talked about, but never really did anything with or put it in writing or whatever. But he was like, if anything ever happens to me, he was like, I want you to do something with it, with some of the money to help someone else. And so like Josh was really big on like trade schools and like blue collar and like people who don't go to college. Like you don't have to go to college. It's okay. And so like I'm in the process right now of trying to figure out how to do a scholarship like in his name.
See, I want to do that for Clayton too, but like for for cancer patients or brain tumors.
Yes. Right.
Like at Houston Methodist, I really want that's something that I want to, even if it's not with his money, like I want to do that in the future.
Do something. Yeah. Like fundraisers or whatever to, and that's exactly what I want to do. It's like to create a scholarship for a kid who's like, I'm not going to college. Like I want to be a welder or whatever, I don't really know what falls into the trade aspect of things, but a plumber, an electrician, whatever.
Oh my God.
That money is helpful for somebody else, and, I'm just kind of starting that process. So if anyone has any tidbits or you've ever dealt with scholarships or know how to get started, let me know, because I'd like to maybe have something put together before the end of like this school year. That way we could maybe do like the first scholarship, before kids graduate this year, and hopefully try and keep it going every year.
That's cool.
But anyway, that's kind of off topic, not really. But I mean, I guess as far as like all of that, I know we discussed a lot of little things about it. I feel like it was kind of all over the place, but
that's my fault.
Mine too. It's hard to, because as you're talking about it, you always think of other things to bring into the conversation that kind of feed into it. But if there's any questions y'all have or y'all think of while listening to this, ask us. And maybe it was just something we didn't think about touching base on about the topic. And if we have an answer, we'll give it to y'all. If we don't, we'll figure it out together.
We'll help you.
Yes. And I mean, and for anyone who's just now going through this process, granted, we're both not even a year into it yet, but I mean, if you're just now getting into this and you have questions about the details of all of it, feel free to reach out. We'll try and be as supportive and helpful as we possibly can. But other than that, I think that's kind of all the tidbits of info I had.
Yeah, same. My only advice is to just get it. Get life insurance. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. Just get something until you feel comfortable enough to splurge on it a little bit more. But I mean, I would definitely, if I could redo it all and I had the authority to, considering the situation, I would have had the max. Like we would have paid $300 a month, $400 a month, just to know that me and the kids were set up.
Yeah.
Because as much, like, even though we got some, it wasn't as much as it could have been, so we did what we could. We're very thankful for what we had, but if you have the opportunity to get it before a loved one passes or like before they get sick, or whatever it is, like get it, because you can't go back. If something happens, you're screwed.
Exactly. And when I'm more financially stable, I'll do it. Next month when I get that bonus, I'll do it. Like, don't wait, because you never know.
And you can always up it or lower it. Like, just get it.
Yes. If you want to wait for that bonus, that's fine. But pay $25 this month. That way there's something there. And then when you get the bonus next month, pay $300 a month, or, however you would like to have it set up. Just don't procrastinate. Don't wait.
I think you can even do like premiums, like where you pay $1,000 a year, or whatever it is for, or a few $100s a year, like depending on the policy you get. So there are different,
and every company is different. So shop around. Don't go with the first one you pick, or the first one you find out about, whatever. because everyone offers different things. So,
Yep.
But
All right.
other than
That's
that,
it for today.
yep. And
right.
we will chat with y'all next week.
Bye.